What happened in Texas? Beaumont, you're there for the Pfizer, Brook Jackson, the state trying to intervene to kill the case because they don't want people investigating them. They prefer to say, we've taken over and shut it down, boys. What happened? First, you're pleading this. How did it go? What happened? What do you think happens next?
Yeah, so for those that don't know the background of the case, Brook Jackson is the whistleblower who exposed corruption and fraud in the COVID vaccine case from the very inception in September of 2020 to the Food and Drug Administration and other officials. She brought what's called a qui tam or False Claims Act claim to the attention of the Justice Department under Bill Barr in October of 2020. And the Trump administration under the FDA. It is not clear that Trump was ever told about this during this time period. It is not clear the Defense Department was ever told about this during this time period. The U.S. government then sealed the case, which they have the legal power to do on the grounds that they're conducting a very thorough and important investigation. And they do that for a year. Brook Jackson begins to get concerned that the uptake of this vaccine continues to expand now to young children, and that this is a dangerous vaccine that has not been adequately tested clinically within the guidelines. She's someone who spent the better part of 2 decades only doing this work. She's someone who believes in medicine and believes in science and believes in the clinical testing methods. And what she saw at Pfizer in their clinical testing trials was an embarrassment. It was a complete joke. Basic things. They weren't blinding people correctly. They weren't doing the temperature on the vaccines correctly. They weren't monitoring or reporting adverse events correctly. People's private medical information was plastered on the walls. Needles were sticking out of bags. It was an utter disgrace and debacle. So that there was nothing you could assess as safe and effective based on that clinical survey from what she saw at multiple clinical test trial locations and what high-ranking officials there had confirmed to her was systemic across all the clinical testing places. It included money being paid under the table, friends and family being brought in ways that violated all the clinical guidelines, you name it. As soon as she declared, she was subject to all kinds of questionable activities by Pfizer and its affiliates and associates, including what would be illicit surveillance and libel campaigns and smear campaigns. Went for it anyway, and then the government what they were really doing was not investigating; they were hiding the corruption for as long as possible so they could force as many people to take the drug as possible because Big Pharma and Joe Biden are in bed together. And so she hired me. We got the case unsealed, got the information public. That led to a radical reduction in the number of people who were taking the vaccine. Brook Jackson's actions likely saved millions of lives. But there are millions of other lives that were harmed that she wasn't able to save due to the corruption and culpability of the Big Pharma, and it appeared at various levels, the Justice Department. So we brought this action, and the case, we had filed a complaint. Judge had dismissed part of it, allowed a part of it to be amended. We amended that part, brought additional legal theories before the court, and on the eve of a hearing on Pfizer's motion to dismiss, the U.S. Justice Department suddenly intervened and demanded the judge dismiss the case as well.
Let me stop you there. They let you carry this case for how long and at what cost before they then finally decide to intervene to kill the case?
Years. So, I've been on the case, I think I go back more than 2 years now. And we've spent 7 figures in terms of legal time and investigative time on the case. And not compensated at all. So so that gives you an idea. And the government, never said that they didn't. In fact, in their motion to dismiss, they didn't cite any factual grounds. In terms of questioning the complaint, no one said anything under penalty of perjury. Not a single official at the FDA, the DOD, the White House, the Justice Department. Nobody would say anything under penalty of perjury as to any questions they had with the factual or empirical basis of the suit. And instead, what they said is, look, the official position of the Biden administration is that the COVID vaccine is good. So we can't allow any lawsuit to go forward that will expose the COVID vaccine is not good. which is preposterous. And the point of the Ketam claims allowing individuals to pursue it, Congress deliberately chose not to give exclusive power to the U.S. government officials, while U.S. officials might be embarrassed by the exposure of the fraud. They might also be culpable. They also might be complicit. They not just embarrassed in the fraud. That's why it's up to the American people to vindicate the interest of the American people. So our argument was that this extraordinary motion to dismiss at this last minute was violated her right to petition and the American people's right to remedy under the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, offended basic principles of due process and equal protection of law, and was contrary to the intention of both the good cause requirements for intervention under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure and under the Ketam and False Claims Act. And we had the hearing. They had a dozen lawyers on their side. A lot of good folks came out to the hearing, participated in the hearing, to observe the hearing. The folks from our Viva Barnes Law.locals.com board, I got a time to chat with them both before and after court, which was always great. Nice people, good people, right people doing righteous work. And my closing argument, Warner Mendenhall made excellent arguments. Jeremy Friedman, both my co-counsel, made arguments, showed how the law was clearly on our side. And my conclusion was that this case about the American people in Brook Jackson. One of the things the judge did is the judge thought there could be other remedies. He's like, well, if this vaccine turns out to be dangerous, if it turns out to be ineffective, if the FDA's decision to be wrong about labeling and marketing and authorizing its labeling and marketing under its emergency powers, then why can't you sue the FDA under those circumstances? Why can't you sue Pfizer under those circumstances? The judge was unaware that, in fact, you can't. As I got up and finished my close, like the government's talking about suing the FDA. I've sued the FDA on this exact issue. And you know what the FDA says? And the courts go along with them? No standing. You can't sue them. Nobody has any right to challenge the FDA. We're bringing that up before the Supreme Court of the United States in a cert petition we filed last week. And they say, sue Pfizer. No, Pfizer's immune. Can't sue Pfizer either. The only court where there can be any account for what happened, any responsibility for what happened, any truth to what happened is the Brook Jackson case. It is the sole mechanism and means of remedy in the United States courts concerning the fraud about this vaccine. And it's like what we all know is they promised to deliver a safe, effective vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19. What they delivered was dangerous, ineffective, not a vaccine, and never prevented COVID-19. They lied. Pfizer lied. People died. Are the courtrooms closed or not? And that's what we're going to find out from the court.
Robert, I have to pull something up because it's just like people are going to sort of forget about this, like the work that Brook Jackson did and the work that people like Hochul did. Listen to this, people. I had to go find this because I knew that I was. Oh no, hold on, that's not the right one. I knew that I was outraged at the time of this. Listen
in this case, they literally recommended that everyone 6 months and older should get a shot. You do not want your baby, your young child, to have to go to the hospital. So don't wait on this. 6 months is the age. Sounds young, but children get shots from birth. They can do it. I encourage everyone, don't let your baby be one that is in a cold, dark, scary place, unknown to them, scary for your child. Think about them and get them vaccinated.
I had to have said something mean to her because this makes me. I encourage everyone, don't let your baby, I quote it, 6 months, you're damn right it's young, almost ludicrously young for a new shot that has literally been, or not even been around for 6 months. This is the face of the banality of evil. Robert, I just wanted to bring that back up. But I also want to bring this one up because people seem to have forgotten, like, Brook Jackson may have, and like you say, did in fact save lives. And then there's others whose lives have been utterly destroyed. Kayla Pollack being one of who I've interviewed on the channel, who's rendered a quadriplegic as a result of the Moderna booster. And it's not Pfizer, but I presume all of these test trials were equally as superficial. Robert, so you're going after Pfizer. Speaking of Moderna, do we know if the tests and the trials and whatever were roughly the same with Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and AstraZeneca?
It appears so, yes. It appears so with all of them.
And Now, I won't. I don't want to disclose our private discussions, but your prediction on what the judge is going to do.
Well, I got into trouble for calling the judge, for saying the judge his previous opinion when he originally dismissed the case, and then later modified that opinion, didn't fully dismiss it. I called it a wuss. But in my view, we need judges to have courage, and they cannot continue to cower in front of corrupt corporations and governments and agencies. We have they're the Justice Department official participating in the case, made no oral argument, even though she appeared to be lead on the case, was at the FDA when this was going down. I mean, that's a conflict of interest. The entire Justice Department is a conflict of interest. The Biden administration is a conflict of interest. And nobody wants to talk about what's obvious. This is corruption and collusion between Big Pharma and the government that's causing the deaths and disabilities and discrimination against millions of people around the world. This is a public health disaster. And are our courts really closed? Is there really no third branch of government? Does the petition for redress of grievances under the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution mean nothing? Merely because Amy Coney Barrett forgot it existed at her congressional confirmation hearings? So I hope the judge was very fair in the hearing. I hope he has the courage to do it. And the judge himself was asking, has any other judge stood up to the government, basically? Has any other judge refused these requests? They're like, it's very rare. And we know it's very rare. But what they're doing here is even rarer. So I hope the court has the courage. We'll find out.
The refusal of the request is nothing more than the allowance or the allowing of the lawsuit. It's not like the refusal of the request suppresses rights. The refusal of the request enhances rights.
Exactly. I mean, so just deny the government, and we said we can do it without prejudice. At least make them sign something under penalty of perjury. Really think it's safe and effective? Say it under penalty of perjury. Not in front of the press, not in front of the cameras, not in pleadings where you're not bound by anything. Say it under penalty of perjury. We had leading scientists and doctors put their names under penalty of perjury in this very case. Brook Jackson put her name under penalty of perjury in this very case. Why can't one single government official do it if this drug is so safe, if this drug is so effective? Why don't they welcome a trial, a public trial, if they're right? Because they know they're wrong. They know Pfizer lied, people died, government is culpable. Will the courts answer the people's call and cry for help? That's what we're going to find out.
Robert, so that I can live vicariously through you, did you say Pfizer lied, people died in court?
I know I did last time. I'm not sure if I said it. I said a version of that. The government lawyer that I had called out for having a conflict of interest was there. She chose not to speak, which I found interesting. They both came up to me afterwards. I think the guy who made the lead argument wanted to say hi. I think she wanted to strangle me by the nature of the way in which he came up. So, but I was like, hey, don't be corrupt, and I won't call you corrupt.